Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a whole bunch of work on this 2016 Ram Promaster 3500. This has the 3.6 liter V6 in it, and we're doing a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to be changing out the oil cooler assembly, the thermostat, the water transfer piece here, and then we've also got some heater hoses as well as spark plugs and the our coolant reservoir as well. These are bad for cracking, where the seam lets go and they start to leak coolant. We will also need some fluids as well, so engine oil and coolant. We need to drain those when we're going to do our oil filter cooler. You can see underneath of here we've got passageways, and basically what happens is we've got in and out for oil and in and out for coolant. When we lift this thing up, it's going to just dump oil and coolant all into the valley, and it gets all mixed up. So we want to try to just avoid that as much as possible, and we're going to drain the fluids first so that, you know, at least a lot of that is going to come out and it'll make less of a mess and probably stop a lot of the cross contamination. So we're also doing spark plugs. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but I guess on these vans they're really bad for water that drips down behind the cowl and it ends up pooling up in the intake manifold. Right where the fasteners are, there's sort of a tube that the fastener goes inside of to bolt the manifold down, and then those bolts, they get rusty, and a lot of times the head will rot away and you're not able to actually get the bolt out, and it turns into a whole nightmare. So it looks very deceiving to work on this thing. You can see how there's really not a lot of room to get in anywhere. And that's just the way it's designed. If you just look past all of the exterior components, we've got our engine and transmission down in here, and then we have a whole bunch of things that are scattered around it. So we've got our intake, coolant reservoir, brake reservoir, fuse block, the PCM's right here. Our air box is down in here. There's a bunch of ductwork, coolant lines, vacuum lines. There's our heater hose lines. And we need to remove a lot of the stuff off the front of this van in order to access everything. So we will be removing this panel, the headlights, this panel, the grille. There's another subsection that the grille attaches to in behind, and we'll take this upper radiator support off, and possibly even these outer panels as well. There's nothing really in behind them, but it's just going to open up a lot of room and make it so much easier to work on. So I guess without further ado, we might as well start taking these headlights out. So let me go get some tools. All right guys, so to take the headlight out, pretty simple. We start with this trim panel up here. You can see we've got a couple thumb screws, and they're actually also a number 3 Phillips. So we'll just loosen these off very carefully. And once we get these out, we're gonna lift up on this. However, this side up in here actually just has sort of a hook that hooks in underneath of that trim that's above it. So we'll get this out. I'll set these. So there is like a little stud piece that sticks down to sort of secure it. So we've got to sort of pop this up. There we go. And I think there's another one, yep. And then we lift it up and sort of out and away. So you can see there, that hooks in underneath of this fender piece here. So do not lift up on this corner. This is the last one that comes out. There's our 2 pressure clips. So we'll set that aside. It's the same procedure for the one on the driver's side. Now we want to take this piece off down here, this trim piece. Once again, we just need a number 3 Phillips screwdriver. Remove this screw right here. And then it's just simply carefully pry it out this way, and then it should just pop outwards. So it's got to go out this way. These are really, really common to break. But usually if you get a trim tool, you can sort of just work them back and forth. Let's see if I get this bottom one. Yeah, there There we go. So there you go. Like I say, they go in this way. So they need to go out and away, not this way, but this way. Okay, now we want to take the headlight off. Pretty simple. We've got 3 10mm screws. We've got one located at the top here, and then we've got one here and one here. We take all those out. The headlight comes straight out, and we've got an electrical connector on the back that we're going to need to unplug. Okay, so here's the electrical connector that's up here. There is a locking tab located at the very top that we need to depress, and then that just unplugs. We'll set this aside. You can see here there's a locating dowel right here that goes into this plastic piece here. That sort of just locates the headlight. But yeah, just a slight snug pull and it should pop out of place. And then for that connector, a lot of times it might be a little bit tricky to get off, but as you can see, the very top of the connector, there's the push tab. And I like to just push in on the connector first, then push down on the clip and pull away. That usually does the trick. So we're gonna do the same thing for the driver's side, exact same procedure, and then we can move on to the grille. Okay guys, let's take the upper portion of the grille off. This is the chrome section. It's separate from the lower section that's painted here. So we've got 4 T30 Torx. So just remove those. And then the grill should just be held on with pressure clips. There we go. Yeah, you can see those clips there that sort of secure it. So a little bit up and a little bit away from you. It's on a 45-degree angle. Okay, now we're going to remove this under section / lower section of the grill. Once again, we've got T30 Torx that basically go around the entire perimeter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there may or may not be one that's supposed to go in here. It might be missing, and I'm not too sure, but maybe here and here as well. Somebody's had this apart before, so it might have some pieces that are actually missing. But we should be able to just slowly work this off. Once again, it's just held on with some clips. And then this whole piece will come off. Okay, the next thing we need to do is remove our wiper cowl. Our goal here is to take this box off, and we just want to open up some room to get in here and work. To get the wiper cowl off, we're first going to remove these caps. There's some covers that go over your wiper arm nuts. Another thing to make note of is you want the wipers to be in the park position as well, so that we'll know where to put them back in. And if you really wanted to, you could actually just take some masking tape or something and just put some across here to where the wipers are currently sitting, so that we can put them back pretty much exactly where they were. Once we take the caps off, the next thing that we're going to do is remove both of the nuts. They are going to be 17mm nuts. And then once we get those off, there are 6 Phillips screws located here, here, 2 here, 1 in here, and 1 up here to get the cowl off. But we also have our washer sprayers that are integrated into the cowl as well. So a quick, easy way to basically just disconnect those is I'll just unplug it, the hose right off of the washer pump. And then there's one clip actually that's just in behind this fill neck where it secures onto this air box. So I'll just unplug that. I actually have a little hose that I use to sort of put that in place so that it doesn't completely leak all over the place, because you will lose a bunch of washer fluid if you just unplug that. I guess I could just close the hood and make my life easy, but right there. Now we can get the wipers off basically by just pushing up and down on the arm. You can see here there's a washer as well that was on there, and this would probably be best to just do this with the hood in the closed position, but we're just gonna carefully bring that up, and I'll grab that in a second. See how we push down, up and down like that? It just breaks the bond free on the splines. And we're also just going to make sure we note which wiper is left and which wiper is right. So, all right, let's take these Phillips screws out. Okay, so the screws that are on the very outside are on the ends. They're a number 2 Phillips, and the ones that are on the inside, so those two that are there, and these ones here, those are going to be a number 1 Phillips. Oh, wait. Okay, so there's a drainage hose that runs from the bottom of the cowl down to down here to off-run water, and there's a clamp that secures it to the firewall. So you'll notice that there's actually a couple little teeth that you squeeze together to pull this apart, and then it's going to let you take the whole hose with it. So instead of cutting this one-time use clamp, we're just going to take the whole drainage pipe with us when we go to take this out. So now to get this thing off, we need to close the hood, because the hood needs to be down and out of the road. So that's why we haven't taken this off yet, because we need something for the hood to sit on. Okay, we also have these drainage tubes that are on both left and right side of the very outer. Once again for water drainage, and we're just going to carefully stick those through. We're just going to pass them through, and we'll reinstall those when we go to put it back on. Okay, so this cowl piece has some double-sided tape behind it. I'm not 100% sure if it's like that from the factory. These things are an issue for draining water down into the intake and then rotting those bolts out. So you can see the customer has attempted to try to mitigate that issue with some silicone and tape. So we've got to basically just get this stuff to let go so we can get this cowl out. There is also pressure clips that are underneath of this too, just to let you know, that they're just sort of down in here. This whole thing snaps into. You can see this is like a 2-piece thing. The cowl is separated into 2 pieces is what I'm getting at. And the driver's side one overlaps the passenger side one. Okay, now we're gonna see if I can just open up the hood enough to get it sort of out of the road to get this up. We need to get this cowl piece over these wiper arm shafts that are sticking out. We do also have this rubber piece here as well that is also connecting the two. So we should just be able to undo one of these sides.
I'll leave it just like a little bit so that we can just like take it out. We got lucky. You good?
Yep. All right, so we're just taking the hood off. I remember being able to get those cowls off without taking the hood off, but yeah, I just thought, let's just take the hood off. It's 4 10mm bolts, and you can see on the very ends where the bolts go through. I've used a paint marker, so I know exactly where to put them back for hood alignment reasons. So let's go set this out of the road. Oh, there we've got our one drain hose connected on there. All right, we've got one, so I'll let you go on this side. We've got one 10mm nut that's on the back in here. And then we've just got 2 10mm bolts that are up here, out in the open. And that should be it to get this box out. This kind of just moves out of the way. I'll just leave that in there. So I'm okay, so we removed the cabin air filter. There should be, I'm guessing it's 2 Phillips screws. Somebody else has been in here and put one of the wrong screws back in. But the other 3, 1, 2, and 3 10mm bolts are hidden behind the filter. Careful not to drop them down the hole. Okay. Okay, we do have this, there's another hose that's on this side down here. I'll show you. This just pops off the rubber hose. And then this piece comes out. Look at that, we almost have enough room to work on this now. Now what we're gonna do is drain the coolant out of this thing. And we'll probably drain the engine oil out of it too while we got it up on the lift. This coolant reservoir bolts to this bracket, and this bracket bolts to this bracket. So we're just gonna drain the fluid. That way we can just take this coolant reservoir right off, and we don't have to worry about getting coolant everywhere. So let's get it up and drain it. All right, we're gonna just drain the oil right now. So I think it's supposed to be a 13mm drain plug, but there's a 16 in this for some reason. So it might have been replaced at some point, I'm not too sure. Okay, so we drained all the oil. I put a new gasket on the plug and stuck that back in there. Once again, I don't think the factory drain plug needs a gasket. I'm pretty sure it has like a rubber O-ring that's built into the plug. But this is a, as far as I know, replacement drain plug. So we put a gasket on there, tighten that down. Now we're just going to cut the zip tie off, which I don't think is supposed to be there, but nonetheless, we have started to remove the 8mm bolts that go along the front. So I'm pretty sure there's 3 of them that go along there. There's a 16mm bolt here that I've taken out. And then up in here, might be a little tricky to see, but there is a 8mm bolt that's up in there that we need to take off. And I think there's another one over here. Might have to take my extension off. Now you might be asking me, why are we taking all these shields off? And that is because when you drop things, they go down here and land on the shield, and then you can't get them. Also, we're about to open up the cooling system and it's gonna make a mess. This thermostat and crossover tube are located on the side of the engine over here. And when we go to open those up, there is coolant that will not drain out when we open up the drain, and it's just going to spill all over. So once we finish our work, we're gonna wash everything off. And I don't want a bunch of coolant getting stuck on the shield and then leaking out on the customer when he goes to leave. So as a professional way to do things, we take all the shields off. All right, we are going to drain the cooling system now. So you can see here that they use one-time use clamps to get crimped on. So that's really unfortunate. However, luckily we got this teed-in section here that we're just going to undo the clamp and separate that. And we're going to catch all our coolant in here so that we can recycle it properly. We have new coolant that we're going to put in. So I'm going to lower this thing down. I just went to undo this clamp and it just completely sprayed out all over the place. So it wants to come off. So let's lower this thing down and get it set up. Obviously, so a couple things to note. You don't want to open up the cooling system if it's hot. You could burn yourself and it's under a lot of pressure. Secondly, safety glasses and gloves are a recommendation. You don't want to get that stuff in your eyes, and it's not very nice on your skin. So do as I say, not as I do. Okay, we're just going to cut these clamps off. They're one-time use crimp clamps. Flathead screwdriver, pry them open, we can take them off. If you want, you could use a paint marker to mark which one's front and back, or like if you're not going to keep track of them. If you're not replacing this, you can just take the bolt, the 13mm bolt out, and just try to flop this out of the road to get it out of your way so you can get it into work. But we're replacing this, so that's why I'm showing you to cut these clamps off, by the way. So the rubber over time will get baked onto the plastic and it gets really stuck on there. So I just use some pliers to gently massage those hoses and break that bond free. And then what I'm gonna do is just sort of tuck my hoses up so that I know which one is front and which one is back. And then we can take this thing out. Okay, so we loosen that off. Take that washer out of there. This thing should just pop up. And then we've got one hose on the bottom. And we got to do the same with that. We got to cut that as well. this one sort of has like a hook style. It's still a crimped clamp, so it's junk. When you take it off, it's junk. You can see it's already been crimped. These are a one-time use replaceable clamp. Unfortunately, that's just the way they build these things. And then we just carefully take that off and we'll get a new one. We want to just twist this. They get really stuck on there. And you can see how there's a cutout there. That's got to line up with this when we go to put the new one on. So we'll just take this off, get our reservoir out of the way. Now we can take the rad support off. Let's take this wiring harness off. And then that's gonna just, yeah, that's on a bracket there. There's another one. Right in between those two lip looking things. Open that up. We've also got our cable here. Now the cable runs into the inside of here and it goes right here. So we're gonna take these 3 10mm nuts off to remove the latch, and then we'll take the cable off so we can fish the cable back out so it's out of the road. Okay, so this, you can see where it is right in the center one. I guess you can adjust it, which is kind of cool. Never seen that before. And that just like passes around. It's supposed to pass around. Yeah, like that. Okay. Now just keep making note of where that passes through. And once again, we can just sort of tuck that over to the side like so. And I'm just gonna sort of put this back on so we don't have to keep track of all these nuts. Okay, so a couple bolts there. Couple bolts there. We've got our air conditioning and radiator, all that gets supported through these brackets. Those are 13mm. 8mm clamp. Now we're gonna try to just lift this. We'll leave these on and we'll just lift them up. I guess we got to get this harness and weasel it around here. Just be careful not to scratch any of the painted panels. All right, we're gonna undo this clamp first. And then what we're gonna do is we'll separate this lid. We'll take the lid off. Actually, we can probably just take this whole assembly right out. So let's try to just take this bolt out. 10mm bolt. Now let's just see, this thing should be just sitting on some grommets, I believe. No, it might be bolted in. No. Yep. And carefully weasel that out. You can see the there's 2 plastic dowels that stick out the bottom. They go into these rubber grommets in here. We'll pop that back in. And now we can continue on with the intake. The next piece of air intake duct off. You can see this big yellow clamp that's here. And all you've got to do is squeeze the 2 tabs like this. And then this should just come off like so. Sort of tuck it to the side. We're going to need to move it in a bit. But for now, next thing we need to do, we've got an intake air temperature sensor. Depress the little button clip there, tuck that to the side, 8mm clamp. This thing should pop out of here. And then hopefully we can weasel this thing out, just like so. That's giving us more room. Good. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. The other end of this hose, Yeah, that's right, you guessed it, one-time use clamp. So we're gonna leave that attached to the valve cover down there. I'm just gonna undo it off of here. And we're gonna tuck that to the side so that we don't have to put a new clamp on there. Now we're going to undo some other things here to get this off. You can see we've got some fasteners located here. They're all 8mm, and they all run across. And then there's some inside of these holes that the water drips into and it rots them out. So besides those fasteners there that hold the intake down, we have a couple other ones, and they're located back here. So we've got 2 brackets that come up. You can see there's a 10mm nut, and then there's another one as well that's located right here. So we need to undo those and loosen the brackets off a little bit in order to get those out. There's studs that go into the intake that the intake hooks into, and then it drops down and gets bolted down. So even if we take all the main mounting bolts out, we still can't take the intake off. And you can't take the studs out because they put a face on the stud. So it just won't come out, it'll run into that bracket. It's not a very nice design, but that's just how it is. And then there's also another bracket that's over here in this back corner that also has some 10mm bolts on it as well, or 10mm nuts as well. So we need to get those off too. Let's start moving some stuff out of the road. We need to undo our evaporative purge valve. That needs to get moved out of the road with some wiring as well, and a couple hoses that need to get undone. And we'll just move all this stuff out of the way to clean this up and access it a little bit more. And then we can start taking some fasteners off. Okay, so we've got a couple connectors. We've got electronic throttle body. There's a little white tab that needs to get pulled out before you can depress it to get it to come off. We've also got this plug here. There's a push button here. That's for our evap purge valve. Then I just undid the rubber line that goes to the intake. We take that off, we can move this sort of out of the road. This is plastic, but it is kind of flexible. You'll notice we've got a clip here that secures the intake. We can take that off. We've got another pressure sensor. I believe this is mass air pressure sensor. And little red locking tab slides out a little bit. Depress that, pull that off. That gets our harness out of the way. That gets this out of the road. You can see our intake starting to look a little cleaner here. We've got a PCV hose that's located right here. That's going to slide off. And a lot of times the rubber will get stuck on there, so you're gonna have to fight it a little bit. But we should be able to get it off. We also have another line at the very back that's going to go to the intake here. It has a one-time use clamp on it. Surprise. But we do luckily have a connection on this side, and there's going to be 2 square buttons that we just need to press together, one on either side, and we should be able to just slip that off. That's going to come with the intake. Okay, we're just going to slip a little pick in there, hopefully. Yep, help us get that off. That can just stay. So we're just going to cut these zip ties so that we can move this electrical harness out of the road here. And we've got this hard steel line. That's actually going to be one of our heater hose lines that goes to the heater core inside the car to give you heat. These just slide out of there. And this is going to give us a little more access to these nuts that are down here. We can take the nuts off for the intake and leave the brackets tight. And then what we're going to need to do is undo the 2 nuts for the bracket in the back, but we're going to need to take the bracket pretty much off in order to lift the intake up and slide it backwards to get the studs to come off of the brackets at the front to get the intake off. So that's the easiest way I've found to do it. All right, the easiest way to get to these nuts is with a 10mm ratcheting wrench. You just sneak it in there like so, break it free. We'll do the same thing for the one that's over here. And just loose enough so that we can get in there with our fingers. else are you bolted on? Okay, so in behind this heater line that's forked, that goes over this stud, you can see the stud has a nut on it that we need to also loosen off. And we just pretty much give this a little bend out of the way. Not very much, but enough just to get in behind it. It looks like we have got a washer also that needs to come off. And now we should be able to access that, that fastener down there. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's also a 13. Yes, it is. Now, before you take this off, it's a smart idea to try to get these wiring harness clips. There's little Christmas tree clips that go past through holes. So there's one for this harness that needs to come out, and there's another one for this harness here that needs to come out that's on the back side. Okay, I'm used to taking these clips off on the Caravans because it's the same intake, but I'm just gonna see if I'm able to kind of just leave this flopped over to the side without taking it off. I think we can kind of do that. We'll just leave that like so. Okay, next thing we want to do is take our main fasteners off. So they're all 8mm, like I said. They're gonna be here, here. You can see the ones in the back. There's two down in these holes. And then I believe there's another one that's gonna be either down in here. No, it's down in here. Yeah, it's located down there. All right, so here's what we want to do. We need to make sure that these holes are as clean as they can be. So we're using a vacuum, a long pick, and compressed air to try to scrape around the bolts and get all the rust off. These fasteners here that are down in those holes, like I say, they collect water and then they rust until there's no head left on the bolt, and then you can't get the bolt out. So you have to then, if you can't get the bolt out, either drill down until you drill the head off of the bolt, or try to use an extractor or some other methods like that of grinding the head off so that you can get the thing out. So we're gonna try to just get these out without any special methods, but we may need to use extractor or drill or something like that. So I'm just trying to clean up all the rust the best that I can so that they're not rusted and that the socket will go on as good as it can get. Okay, so this one down here, if you take a close up, I might be able to actually extract that if I get a socket onto it. There are some sides left. However, the other side, there really isn't any sides left to it. So you can see here on a good one of these fasteners how there's we've got a Torx cutout in the center for a Torx fastener for a socket. So I'm going to use that as my guide. I'm going to start with a really small drill bit, and then I'm just going to work my way up. But what we're going to try to do is just drill so that the head basically comes off. And it really shouldn't be that bad. We've got new fasteners here so we can see what the fasteners look like. Okay, and there's not much left of them. Well, these ones don't have the Torx cut out in them, but this is what they look like. So we just basically got to get down to this diameter with a drill bit. And luckily there's that Torx cutout that's going to center us. So okay, I'm going to begin the operation by using an 8mm socket, which is the size it's supposed to be, and just tapping on it, moving this around to knock any rust scale off. And we're going to go back in with a vacuum and compressed air, clean it back out. I'm going to try to drop down a size. I might even grab something Imperial. I can feel it's just catching the corner. I can feel it's just catching the corners of this one. So I might be able to find just an undersized socket to get it on there and knock it on and then get it to break free. This one on this side though, however, it's not really biting at all, so. Straight. Now I gotta move my light.
size you use?
I stepped down to a 5/16 1/4-inch socket mated to my snap-on impact driver, and we use that to extract El Bolto.
Okay, I gotta get a magnet to get it out, but
The impact driver, so we basically just, as you're hitting the hammer, it's driving it down and turning it at the same time so that it doesn't skip. And I'm really surprised I was actually able to get that out. Hopefully we can do the same on the other side. Stay in there. Yeah, it's not good enough. I got no throat. Okay, so we got that drilled out now. I just ran through some small sizes drill bits and we just worked our way up until we were pretty much where I thought was through. And then my calculations were correct and I undid the other 6 bolts and then it just went pop and it just came up. So now we need to try to get this off. The tricky part is the bolt, there's still going to be this much of a bolt that's stuck in the bottom of the intake, so we need to get the intake up high enough to get it over the bolt. And so what we might have to do, like I said in the beginning, usually you don't have to loosen these brackets off, and once you take these bolts out you can just sort of slide it forwards. But in this case, I'm going to see, we might be able to do it, but see, we're running into this firewall here because we're so close to the firewall. So I'm going to see, oh, looks like we can do it. Carefully move this out of the road. And now we'll have to extract that out of the lower intake. So let's set this aside. We'll come back and clean this all up, but let's continue. Okay, here's where all the fasteners are. So you've got 1, 2, 3. There's one that's hiding down in this hole. And then there's 5, 6, and 7. All right, we carefully take the foam off, and now we can basically undo this. Our oil cooler assembly and housing is underneath of this. This is the lower intake. And you can see we've got a fuel line coming in, branches off to the 2 fuel rails here. And we've also got our fuel injectors. Those are gonna be located in our lower intake as well. So we need to unplug all 6 fuel injectors, disconnect our main fuel line, and then unbolt our bolts here, and we should be able to just take that whole assembly right off. That's gonna give us access to the cooler. All right, so there's the one bolt that we got with the impact driver and the socket. Luckily, we were able to just get that out. Not much grief. The other one, the head is still kind of stuck in there. So I'm gonna have to get, I'm gonna have to scrape it and work at it to get that to come out so that we can put a new fastener in there. All right, so there's the bottom of the bolt that sits on the intake, and there's the top of it, how rusty and gross it is. So we drilled it out just enough so that it was just about the size of the actual, the bolt itself, not the head. And then, yeah, we'll just clean that up, make it look all nice and pretty. No damage to the intake. Just, we gotta put new bolts in it. Now, we're just gonna clamp some vice grips onto this. And just as simple as taking that out, and then we can continue. Okay guys, now we're gonna undo our fuel injectors. I'm gonna use this stuff called silicone spray, and this just makes the plastic slippery. It really aids in taking these red locks off. We're not gonna completely take them off, but we wanna disengage them, and they just pop up, but a lot of times they get stuck. So I like to just soak the connector in this stuff. It doesn't damage the connector, it doesn't harm anything. This is basically what it's for. It's for rubber and plastic. And it also helps wash any dirt, any of that stuff out. So we're just gonna hit it with that. And then all we gotta do is just get underneath of this thing. Now, I might actually grab a right angled pick, that works too. So you can either go underneath of here, and this is one of those things you need patience for. So we don't want to wreck the plastic. Or there's also another spot that you can get to from underneath, but you're not going to be able to see it. Okay, so that's disengaged. But on this red clip, down here, there's basically a little arm that goes down and it hooks in. And it just keeps the connector from being able to be squished to come off, is what it's there for. So now I'm just gonna try to get this off to show you guys. So there's the connector. You can see in the center, there's the little arm that goes down and it comes out the bottom. So what I was doing was using the pick to come in from the bottom and unclip it and push it up. But a lot of times you can use like a flathead screwdriver just to slip in underneath of here. It's just, in this case, it's tricky because it's angled downwards and sideways towards this stuff, so you can't really get in there with a flathead screwdriver. There, that's how it was supposed to go. Okay, so we just unplug all of our fuel injectors. Kind of get those out of the road. We can leave these wiring harnesses here attached to the valve covers, that's fine. Next thing we got to do is fuel. This one you're going to want to just be careful. Obviously gasoline is very, very flammable. We've got this red lock tab that needs to come out of the way, and it should just pop off or open up. And then we've got a green tab that we need to push down on, but there's one on the other side too, so you got to squish it together and then take it off. So I'm going to go grab some pliers. That's going to help us, but we will also want to just wear safety glasses for this because there's some pressure in here. We don't want to get sprayed in the eyes. Gloves, don't want to get fuel on your hands, it burns. And then also what I like to do is just stick a rag in underneath of here because there will be gasoline that's going to leak out. We want to try to catch as much of that as possible. You don't want it going all over the place. So let me get set up. Okay, this one didn't have very much pressure in it, that's good, but keep in mind there's going to be a bunch of fuel in these fuel rails, so when we take this off, just watch if you go to move it and tilt it, a bunch of gas is going to come out of that. We've got one electrical connector tab that we just need to undo from there, and then now we just need to unbolt all of the 8mm bolts. So tight. That one's also really tight. Alright, we'll probably have to break that one free. this thing should come out of here. Oh, right, this also needs to come off. Sorry, one more electrical connection there. And we've got a heater hose line that they overlay on that, so let's see, can we just sneak it out? There we go. Watch all this fuel. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but when this moves around, it'll just keep pouring out and pouring out. Anyhow, keep that level so we don't get a bunch of fuel all over the place. Set that aside. We'll clean that later before we put it on. Okay, so this happens on every one of these 3.6 liter V6s, but as you can see, we get dirt and debris and all kinds of leaves and all that stuff, and it gets down in between underneath of that lower intake. And there's not really a whole bunch you can do to get that stuff out of there. And it's not a huge deal. Really, we have, you know, we're gonna clean all this out right now. We're gonna get the vacuum and suck it all out. But for the most part, the valves are closed for all but one of the cylinders. So yeah, we're just gonna clean this all up the best that we can, and then we can put rags in there so that it keeps all the cylinders blocked off while we work on our oil cooler assembly. Okay, so we're just stuffing a bunch of rags down in here right now. We need to resurface all of this and clean all that. And it's just all gonna go down into the intake, into the engine. We don't want that, so. Preventative maintenance. All right, so now what we're gonna do, let's just unplug this one. It's nice and easy. A little silicone spray. Pop that red lock upwards. And then the button's on the back side where you can't see it, but that's what it looks like. Little black button in the center. Push it, pull it out. We've got another one down here, but this one we can't really get to. And same with this hose. So don't worry about that. What we're gonna do, we're gonna unbolt it, lift the cooler up, and then that's gonna allow us to access the hose in order to get in there and disconnect that connector and take the hose off. So let's undo these. We've got E-Torques here, here, and some over here as well. I'm just gonna go get a socket, I'll let you know what size it is. Okay guys, we got 5 E8 Torques. Inverted Torques, sorry, we call those E-Torques. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one's back here. And once we get all those loosened up, now we can lift this thing up. Like I say, this thing is going to, it normally pukes a bunch of oil and coolant into the valley, and I'm expecting it to a little bit. So we just work it back and forth. There's some tubes that have O-rings on them and they get stuck in the holes. There we go. Now, because we drain the oil and the coolant, I'm hoping it's not gonna make an extreme mess. I'm sure it's still gonna leak a little bit, but hopefully not too much. Now that we can get this thing up, you can see this coolant line has a zip tie that goes into the engine block and how crusty and corroded it is in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'll try to get this thing to come out, but it might be stuck. I might have to cut that zip tie. All right, I couldn't, I was having issues getting that to let go. So we're going to cut this. There we go. Now, oh, somebody's already been in here. See, there's supposed to be a red lock that goes in here that we push out of the way, similar to these ones. And you can see it's missing. So somebody has changed this cooler before. Now we have unplugged this. Last thing we're gonna have to do is just undo this clamp over here. So get some pliers. Move that over. And there's that. Okay. Now we'll quickly get this out of the road so it stops leaking all over. We're going to have to transfer over our temperature into the Dorman one because they don't give you them, which I find is funny. It's the most expensive cooler with, you know, the best aluminum and everything, but you got to transfer your sensors. Okay, we're going to put a couple rags down in here. We're going to soak up anything that has spilled. But you can see for the most part, draining the oil and coolant really saves a lot of cleanup and a lot of mess. So here's what happens and why we drain the coolant and the oil. This valley in here, when you pull that cooler out, all the oil and coolant that are in those passageways, it all just drains out and fills this valley up. And the open passageways of the coolant, the oil goes in there, and vice versa. The oil passages, a bunch of coolant gets in there. And you don't want oil in your coolant and you don't want coolant in your oil. So that's why we do that. But yeah, you can just see how like nasty it is down in there. It's somewhere that, you know, it's dirty, it holds moisture, and it never gets serviced. So the aluminum sees a lot of damage. Everything sees a lot of damage. So we got to clean it up and then we'll move forward. Okay guys, next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to resurface these holes here that our cooler goes onto. And we just want to get all the rust and stuff off of there so that they're nice clean surfaces for the O-rings to sit up against so they seal. And we also need to recondition the surface here where our lower intake sits on. So what I'm going to do is I actually just got a rag here. I'm going to set this over top of these other holes and I'll start one at a time. So we're gonna do this one over here first. And I've got this angle grinder with this is a 3M product. They call it the roll-lock bristle disc. And it's just basically these little nubs. So it cleans the aluminum surface and it doesn't damage it, basically. Okay, so you can see we've got that cleaned up nice. I'm gonna do the other ones. We're gonna go back in with the vacuum, hit all the holes with the vacuum to suck out any dust, anything like that. And then I'm also going to try to clean up some of this sandy stuff here that's been building up. You get a lot of fluids and oil, or fluids and moisture, and yeah, just a lot of dirt and stuff that settles in there, and it's not very good for the block. So we're going to clean that all out the best that we can. And then we'll proceed to clean the top of the heads here where the intake sits onto. All right, so I'm surprised that they make you put this all together, but we got all the pieces. So let's grab some O-rings. We got some O-rings that go here and here. And then this piece goes on like so. You can see we've got a couple alignment dowels. There's really only one bolt pattern for that to go onto. And we're gonna need to transfer over, oh no, we got, yeah, we need to transfer over our sensors, but we got new hardware by the looks of things. Okay, we got to transfer over these sensors now. Oh yeah, nice and tight. Okay, so 19mm socket, deep socket. And that's gonna be for our oil pressure sensor. Might actually be an oil temperature sensor. It is, it's a temperature sensor. And then we've got another one down here. This is gonna be our coolant temperature sensor. And now you could use a 11/16 wrench, or if you go out, you can buy the oil pressure socket. It's gotta be a deep socket though. It is a specialty deep socket. It's got rounded edges on it. Just because somebody thought, well, why wouldn't we just make it regular? No, let's make it special. We'll call it an oil pressure socket. Just another socket to go buy. All right, we just cleaned up all the threads here on the bench grinder. And I'm just putting a little bit of pipe dope on there. Oh, that's way too much. Just a little bit. That's gonna seal us up. We could use Teflon tape too. Okay, we're gonna torque down this cooler assembly to the oil filter housing. That's gonna be torqued down to 106 inch-pounds. I'm just gonna go around and evenly sort of tighten them down. $177 inch-pounds for both of the sensors. And if your vehicle, in this case you're driving a Promaster, it probably doesn't matter, but it says in the instructions they give you a plug with this Dorman kit in case you don't have this sensor, and you just put this plug in its place. We have pre-lubricated our O-ring. The O-ring goes on there, you can see. We've got our filter. Should pop into place. Maybe this one just sits in there. Using a silicone spray so that everything sits nicely. And now we're ready to we got to get this hose on here, remember? And we need to plug this on. We'll do the hose first. Got to get my pliers. Oh God, I feel like a... Okay, now we just need to line this thing up. There's one oil feed tube that's got the O-ring on it that's in this corner. So you just line that up, kind of shimmy it, work it, it'll go down. And then now we can start our 5 bolts and torque those down. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, you want to make sure that your bolt holes don't have any fluid in them, very important. And just make sure that the threads are clean. Okay, now we're going to torque these down to 106 inch-pounds. And we'll probably do 2 passes of that just to make sure that it's seated securely. So let's do that. Okay guys, now what we're gonna do is just change out these spark plugs, and then we'll move on to doing our heater core hoses. Just a quick overview of the heater core hoses. You can see our heater core is here, and then we've got 2 pipes that come out. So one comes to this plastic T with a bleeder screw, and that runs down to this pipe over here underneath of all this stuff. You can see the pipe runs down and up here. There's a T right here that runs over to our cooler, and then it runs up and over along here and down and up and over here. That goes down to just above the, I guess, water inlet or outlet pipe. Then the other hose basically goes the other way. So you can see it drops down, immediately goes right to the back, runs along the back, down the side of the head, and it comes out over here. And then there's also a T on this one as well that branches off right here. And that runs up. Pretty sure that goes to your intake to heat your throttle body. So they are buried underneath of a bunch of lines, but now's the time to do them. And I guess these are really bad for rusting out, but also think about this. We've got a plastic elbow here, and there's another plastic section in the other one. Those plastics get brittle over time and they can crack and break. Also, all of these hoses come with these one-time use crimp clamps. So anytime you would have to take these off, you better have clamps on hand, otherwise you ain't putting them back together. And for the second or third reason, I guess, these hoses, like I can feel this one, it feels pretty spongy, typical hose feel. But yeah, rubber doesn't last forever. You can see how this one, all that crust that's on there, this thing has been, it's starting to leak a little bit. And rubber will eventually break down and you can get, you know, you have a hose that blows out on you. So it's kind of important to replace that stuff as a preventative maintenance thing. So I think I'm probably just gonna replace them. We do have Dorman pipes here. So the one that runs along the back of the head, that's going to be part number 626711. And then the one that runs along the front of the engine, that's going to be 626724. And you can see here, these Dorman replacement parts, you get a thicker hose. All of the clamps are now serviceable. You can reuse them. You've got aluminum elbow. And the one nice thing I like is that it comes with normal clamps. So if you're doing work on the van, you can actually just take hoses off and put them back on. You don't have to be worried about, oh yeah, I need clamps. It needs 60 different clamps. So it's a very nice upgrade, but the fresh rubber hoses is a big one too. And like I say, they seem to be thicker than the hose that's on there. So we're gonna swap those out. But anyhow, let's get these ignition coils off. 10mm bolts for our ignition coils. And then we've also got our connectors as well. I've already loosened these ones off. I was just trying to think if we needed to actually unplug them. I guess not. I have taped the intake, and we were going to put it on, but we're leaving it off right now, just so that when we change the heater core hoses, it'll give us a little bit more working room, hopefully. So just pop all these out. You can see some oil here that's starting. That lets me know that these valve cover seals are starting to leak in around here, and it's unfortunate. I'll have to go see if I got some parts in the back maybe for it. All right, there's that one off. We'll just let those kind of flop over. And now we've got access to get down to our spark plugs. I'll loosen these ones off, and we'll do the same thing with these and flop them over. Now the spark plugs that we're going to be using today are Champion OE. These are direct replacement. There's the part number, RER8ZWYCB4. Those are the same plugs that come in the van from factory. They are an iridium plug, and they look like this. Okay, let's get changing some plugs. All right, it's a 5/8 spark plug socket. We'll take these plugs out. Look how gross this plug is. That's nasty. Okay, so we're going to remove the valve cover so that we can attempt to reseal this spark plug tube that's puking out. That spark plug tube was just full of oil, so it needs a gasket, but it's 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday and we don't have gaskets, and this thing has to get put back together. So it will aid in us taking this valve cover off anyways to give us a little more room for this heater hose, to get to the heater hose. So we've got a couple 10mm nuts that are on the backside, located here and here, that need to come off. And then I believe it just drops down and loops around. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably take the heater core hose off, I think, first, in order to get this cover off. Thing we got to do, separate these lines from these clamps. So you just go right in between here, pry sideways, pops them off, get rid of this. Now to do this back one, so this hose we've already undone off the intake, that's fine. Then it's going to run over here. We've got a wiring harness clamp that needs to come off, so we pop that off. And then this other bolt, remember, or this bracket here, we undid off of this thing, so that's good. Then we've got two, I think I said 10 in the beginning, but it might be 8. Nope, they were 10. Okay, that undoes there, and then the last thing is down in here. So it actually runs kind of down under the engine mount. And I can't really show you, but it's basically right underneath of here. I'm gonna lift this thing up and put a jack underneath of the motor so we can take this mount off, because we need to do the thermostat and crossover pipe anyways. That's where that hose goes to. It goes into the end of this thing. And this thing mounts underneath of this, in behind this bracket in there like that. And the thermostat mounts to this. So let's get that mount out of the way. I'm sorry, we're sort of jumping all over the place in the video. I meant to tell you to put these in and torque them down to 16 foot-pounds before we moved on with the heater core lines. I got carried away with the leaking valve cover. Okay, 16 foot-pounds.
We might as well put these ones back in.
Alright, so we're just gonna put a piece of wood underneath the oil pan. We're not lifting like a whole lot of weight because we're still hanging off of this side. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of lift on the engine so that we can undo the mount without the engine falling down. Okay, so I loosened off these 3 bolts. Those are E-Torques, and I can feel the engine drop down just a little bit, so I know that I need to just give it a little bit more, but we're pretty much at the right amount of pressure on the engine to have it sit where it needs to sit. Then we've got 3 nuts on this side over here. Those are all going to be 18mm nuts. So once we get these 6 fasteners out, we can take this top mount off. They're E20 Torques. Okay, these nuts are 18mm nuts. We've got 1 13mm bolt and 3 16mm bolts. Oh, I can't get to that one. Ooh, those are really long. Okay, so now we're getting the other piece of the motor mount out so that we can get to this plastic crossover pipe. Ingenious design. There it is. All right, we're gonna try to just give this a little slice in here. Okay, it's a one-time use clamp. Okay. There's that, and then this we gotta fish around somehow. Let me set this down. There we go, we cut off this one-time use clamp. Oh, those get glued on there so good. All right, we made an executive decision to just cut this. There's no going back. We literally couldn't get this to come off. We've been trying for like 20 minutes. It's like they glue it on from the factory. They put some glue on there, and they're like, somebody's gonna try to take this off. All right, now we'll do the top one once we do this. We'll get this bottom one out of the road first. So I think we just gotta like finagle it out this way, if I had to guess. Okay, so I had these already unplugged, and there's like these Christmas tree clips that secure the valve cover. I had that already loose, and then we just sort of flopped it over like this, and we were able to get it kind of up and over in that way. So there's that one pipe. And I think what I'm gonna do now is, while I got this off, we're gonna pull this valve cover, try to reseal this, even though the right way to do would be to replace all the gaskets, obviously, but we can't get them. Clean all that up, put it back together, put the new pipe in, then we'll do this pipe. I gotta get a pry bar. Oh, I believe this might have to come out, possibly. Almost forgot we had to remove this position sensor. All right. I might get the vacuum and just suck some of this dirt up before it falls in there. Does this go down to something else? All right, so I come to the realization that there's a vent located on the very end here, mounted with 2 T25 Torx screws. Remove the vent. That's going to allow you to get the valve cover up, and it's got to kind of come over and over, like out this way. Anyhow, we got this thing out. We're just going to try to reseal this thing. I'm sure over time, through so many hot and cold cycles, the seals will eventually lose their elasticity and therefore their seal. So we're just gonna clean them up, put a little bit of silicone on there, a little RTV, and put them back on just to get them to hopefully seal up, just in the attempt that buys us a bunch of time. All right, so how that needs to go on is you basically need to have the valve cover over this way to have the camshaft pop on. Then when it's down like this, you've got your sensors that are sticking in. Then you've got to sort of shift it over this way and on like that. And then it should drop down. It's just a bunch of finagling. Don't be rough with it, just a lot of patience, and just sort of jiggle it. It will go into place. So we've got a little bit of gray RTV that we put in there, I mean, that's just what we're doing because we don't have gaskets for it. Is that the right way to do it? Not really. Will it work? Probably. So I'm just going to clean everything the best that I can. I made sure that there wasn't really any RTV on the inside of the valve cover. There's a gap between the seal and the valve cover where the seal gets pushed in. So I sort of just filled that gap in there so that when it goes on around the tube, it will seal that surface up so that the oil can't get out. And hopefully that keeps the spark plug tubes from filling up with oil, because we don't want that to happen. So if the customer wants, we can discuss another day to take everything apart to do it again. Unfortunately, it's one of these unforeseen things. You get ripping into these things, and it turns out you need a whole shopping list full of parts. All right, these valve cover bolts, they get torqued to 105 inch-pounds. Okay, now we need to take this clamp off and cut this hose clamp off so that we can get our crossover stuff. Down there, and a one-time use clamp right there. Whoa. This is dumb. Cut this hose if I do this. I was hoping that would just break. Get underneath of it. Out with the old. Looks like these are going to be different lengths, so we're going to need to pay attention to where they go. I'm sorry, I might have to stand where you are or look over. All right, so I got all the short bolts in my hands. Pretty sure, yep, the rest of them are all gonna be long. So if you take a look at that, here's where all the short bolts are gonna go. And the rest of them all look like they're all the same length. They're all long ones. Okay, so we're gonna start by mounting this thing with all the short bolts, and then we'll flop all the long ones over afterwards. So we can see here, short bolt, short bolt, short bolt, short bolt. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that. All right, so the aluminum had corrosion on there and stuff like that, and it was just dirty and nasty. So we want a nice, flat, clean mating surface for our rubber gasket so that we have no chance of any leaks. Everything's going to torque down nice and it's proper. So we have gone ahead and resurfaced that area where this is going to mount to, and now we're ready for install. All right, 97 inch-pounds for the crossover tube section. And we're just gonna kind of go across from each other on all the fasteners. All right, we're gonna snug these down to 106 inch-pounds. Try this. Can we just go in like this? Nope. There's 500 clamps in the way. All right. I'm going in this way. How about this? Lots of patience. Take your time. Okay, I'm gonna grab a gear clamp for this one over here. All right, got the good old gear clamp on there. This sucks. There's only enough room for like 2 of my fingers to fit back here. Oh, I got it. Okay. Now, this wiring harness back here, there's like a big plastic tray. You see these Christmas tree clips? They pop in all along the valve cover for that thing to sit in. So we need to go, I'm pretty sure the harness goes on and then this kind of goes on over top of that. So let's get that in. On the inside of that hose, right? So I goofed that. Oh dear God. That's in there. No. Line. All right, something about there. We've got these sitting here. I gotta get these nuts started in the back for that to go down. All right, make sure your wiring harness all looks like it's going in the right direction. Get all these started and we'll tighten these down. 10mm bolts. Can we get in here? Bolt. Okay, we've got a clamp here. Oh, we already cut the zip ties. Okay, perfect. We've got some one-time use clamps down here. I'm gonna have to cut that one off of the bottom and things. We need to undo this. Oh, look at that, a reusable clamp. We can move that out of the road. We're gonna need to save this hose. This is the hose that goes to our cooler. We do not get a new one with our other replacement line. So we're gonna need to transfer that. And then it looks like we've got another fastener down here. I can't see it, might be Torx. All right, we've got a 5mm hex bolt that secures the line to another bracket of some sort down there, and then that goes up to here. So we're gonna cut this non-reusable clamp off up here.
wasn't too bad. That's like the same deal as the stupid one that was up here. Like the hose bulges on either side, so you kind of like, you're gonna cut it either which way you do it. I guess I'll somehow. Nope, I guess I didn't cut through. Okay, we got to undo this clamp over here. Remember, this is for the hose that goes to the cooler. So we can keep that clamp. And we got to break this free without destroying this hose. I have to adjust my pliers here. is going to be in our way. That's got to kind of move. Stick it there. This got to move over here. This thing's got to move there. Then we got our block heater line. So it's got to go under the block heater. Are you catching all this? Okay. Time to finagle all this stuff back around now. So first thing under the block heater. Then we go underneath of this thing. I'm gonna spray some silicone spray onto that. Hopefully that fits. Oh yeah. Now, I'm not gonna, there's a little tab here that you pull and then the clamp lets go. I'm gonna wait until I get everything installed first before I pull that, just in case I need to take it back off. Next thing I'm gonna do here, we've got this bracket that's down in here that we had that 5mm hex key or machine screw that goes in this hole. I'm gonna put it in, and then we'll stick this on. I might swap that out for a gear clamp actually. That's it. Guess I need to loosen that up. This is gonna be okay, now we need to hook this bottom hose up down here. All right, so we just sprayed a little bit of silicone spray on there. Now Dorman, for some odd reason, had their hose clamp positioned downwards right at the bottom lower rad hose. So it made it impossible to get this thing on, but we got it on there. Now, trick question, can we get it over that hump? Not looking like it. Now we got to get that away. So that's about there. I'd say that's about right. Somewhere in the middle. It's away from the belt. Looks good. Okay, let's, I'm cool with that. We're going to pull a pin on that one, so I'll get some pliers. Just to go like this. I know this is stupid, but if I have it out the other way, it's gonna might rub into that thing. weird. Something like that. So those are good. That's on there, that's good. So I guess we're pretty much ready for the lower intake manifold. I still gotta pull that, let's pull that. Okay, we've got the lower intake all cleaned up and ready to go. I've inspected it, looks good, cleaned it all up, new gaskets on the bottom, new gaskets on the top. I've checked all the connectors to make sure that everything's all nice and clean, ready to go. So let's rock and roll, let's get this thing in here. We just need to watch for these connectors. I guess I'll flip them back up there where I did have them. That's pretty close. All right, I just want to hand start these basically so that I know everything's settled where it's supposed to go. Okay, so we're just gonna start snugging these down. 106 inch-pounds, that's the torque spec. So I'm just gonna start going in the pattern here. I don't know, man. Perfect, so once you get those all torqued down in sequence, now we can plug in our fuel injectors. Make sure you line them up right. Push these red tabs in to lock them into place so they can't come undone. Couple fresh zip ties. All right, we're just gonna leave those a little bit loose so that we can move this out of the road because we still have to put our intake on and put the nuts on and stuff in there too. So we need a little bit of room to work before we secure everything permanently. This one might actually go onto the intake manifold. All right, let's get that upper intake on. All right, that one goes in there. And then this one down in here, like so. Okay, so we did get new upper intake manifold bolts. And you'll notice that I took the best of the old ones that had the center torques cut out, and I put those in the spot where they rust. That center cutout piece was like the saving grace to drilling that out because it centered the drill bit right in the middle. If I didn't have that, it would be very difficult to center the drill bit and it would want to walk and it would just make things really messy, and chances are it would probably muck up the intake a little bit. So I put those ones there. We're going to install this with some new bolts on the outside. Got rid of all the old rusty ones. And then once we put this on, I'm going to spray some lubricant in there, some oil, and then hopefully that will keep any moisture off of the fastener and really keep it from rusting in the future. Okay, so those have to go in first, right? It hooks in and drops down. And then we can basically just start our fasteners now. All right, we're just gonna hand start all of these basically is what we're doing. We wanna make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to. There's a big thing that happens with these intakes. I see guys that rush through the job and they completely forget about these two studs, and they'll set the intake on and they go run these bolts down with their impact gun and it breaks this corner off the intake. So make sure that those studs pass through that bracket and it lays down flush, and that everything's flush and it's sitting where it's supposed to be and there's nothing caught under the intake. Otherwise you will break this plastic intake. I've seen it time and time again. All right, let's snug all those down by hand and then we're gonna torque them. They give you the torque spec right on there, so 7 to 9 Newton meters. So we'll run them down at 7. Oh, we had to go back. We forgot to put the foam in. All right, we're gonna do these at 7 Newton meters here. Make sure to follow the torque pattern on the last clip. Okay, we've got, let's see, we've got to put this stud in here. And this bracket's kind of in the way. I'm trying to feel where the hole is. Okay, I feel where the hole is. Okay guys, so this 13 millimeter stud back here that holds the bracket to the head, I've run it down till it's almost tight, but we still need it to be a little loose so that we can pivot the bracket backwards. Once it's onto the studs of the manifold, I started the nuts, ran those down till they're just snug. Now we're ready to torque everything down. So the stud down here that's a 13 millimeter stud, that's gonna get torqued down to 20 Newton meters. And then once that's torqued, we can go to these 10 millimeter nuts up here, and those are gonna get torqued down to 10 Newton meters. As well as these two 10 millimeter nuts that are up here, those are 10 Newton meters as well. Okay, once those are all tightened down and torqued, we can install this breather hose. That can go on. Okay, so we're going to install this now. Let's see. I've lost my way. That's a for sure. Pretty sure that guy goes there. This one goes in here. Push the little lock in. And then we've got this thing that goes on there, this there, that there, and this plugs in. Don't forget this thing. All right, so we ran into a slight issue with the Dorman. It's not even the Dorman replacement part, but this crossover piece that goes under the motor mount, it's actually like been rubbing and pressing against that plastic. And it goes right here. So I noticed I was trying to put this one on and it just wouldn't sit on there right. And I thought, uh-oh, something's not fitting. But sure enough, it's been doing it to the plastic one too. It's just been eating into the plastic. So no wonder these fail. It's this stupid motor mount and the clearance on the motor mount. It's just a design issue. So I'm gonna have to clearance that a little bit in order to get it to fit properly.
because we don't want it rubbing through. We don't want any issues. It's unacceptable. Okay, this is where we had to buff. So this edge here, we had to take that down. And this edge over here, we had to take that down a little bit. Not really going to compromise the structural integrity of the mount. Just a little bit off. You can see where it was rubbing right there. And now everything fits honky peachy dory. So let's put this on. Okay, so this one's going to be 18 foot-pounds. These three are going to be 41 foot-pounds. Okay, let's just hand start all of the fasteners. The three nuts that are on the body side are going to be torqued to 70 foot-pounds. And okay, now these three inverted Torx bolts are going to get torqued down to 59 foot-pounds plus 45-degree rotation. Okay, these fasteners are considered a torque to yield fastener. They're a one-time use bolt. If you hadn't got the hint yet on this van, it's got a lot of one-time use components. So basically they're telling you torque it down to 59, then you give it 45-degree rotation, and it basically stretches the bolt out. And then when you need to take them out and put them back in, you don't. You just throw them in the garbage and you have to go buy new ones. So we're going to tighten it down pretty tight, but you know, they're not going to come loose is basically what I'm saying, and they're not going to snap either, because we're not going to go as far as 45 degrees, but my professional recommendation is to go buy new ones. Yep, so this piece goes on like that. Oh sheesh, how did I do this? All right guys, I got one step ahead of myself. This just needs to come out of the way so we can get this air box back in. Make sure that that tab sits in there like so. We can then plug that in. Stick that back in there. Plug this in. Let's get this tightened down. Guys, I completely forgot about this heater hose bracket nut. So there's a washer that goes on first, followed by a 13mm nut.
Okay, we've secured it onto the intake, and now we're just gonna push this on. Okay. All right, these little rubber dowels that are down in here, or these, rubber grommets. For our plastic dowels, we hit that with the silicone spray, so it makes it all nice and slickery. And then all we need to do is finagle this down in here. All right. Okay, we're in. We've got this long 10 mil bolt that goes in. And we've got this intake duct that goes together. The silicone spray makes all the difference. I'm telling you, it's worth to buy the can. Make sure that's the right way. All right, 24 millimeter socket. I'm just giving that a little snug. I put that on by hand. I just wanted it to be snug. There is actually a torque spec for it. It's 25 plus 5 Newton meters. Okay, so we need to put, this has to connect onto here. All right, we've got this like ground stud that's right here that we got to get around. It's all in patience, just take your time. Make sure our hoses get routed up in the right direction. So this hose goes right here for our reservoir. This is the hose towards the back, and this is the hose towards the front. Now we do need to put new clamps on here because they were one-time use clamps. Okay, we line that up to about there. We have a total of 6 10 millimeter bolts that we need to install for this rod support. Make sure you get them all hand started before we go and tighten those down. Remember our radiator condenser assembly, all that needs to be inside these mounts. And make sure all your hoses are routed in the right place. Air duct is good. Don't forget we've got to put this cable in there too. We'll put that in a sec. Let's tighten this down. All right, we've got our cable now. Now this passes through somewhere. I believe it's this hole, I thought. No, it's not. All right, yeah, you can see it right through there. That hole there. Pass the cable through. Take our latch assembly back off. Can we do it like this? Make sure we're in the middle, which we are. So I sort of just wrapped that around underneath, but that's how it needs to sit. Put this back on, couple nuts. My fingers are so greasy I can't spin nothing.
All right, there's a paint mark there. That might be a good idea too. This latch is like very adjustable. So it might be a good idea to just take like a paint pen and mark out just the perimeter so that you know where that latch needs to go back on. I actually did that with the hood because the hood is very adjustable. So I use a paint marker so that I know where that needs to go back on so that the hood lines up perfectly when we go to close it. Okay, so we've got to put the bottom one on first. Right, this goes this way. I might have tightened that clamp down a little too much. Oops. Not too tight. Keep in mind that is plastic. Now we're going to hit these rubber grommets with the old silicone spray. Magic. Pop those in there. Alright, just hit that with a little bit of silicone. This is going to be the back one. And we're going to go this way with our clamp. Not too tight, but just enough so it's not leaking and it can't slide off. All right, we're gonna use 5.67 liters of 520 synthetic. All right, we are replacing that tension clamp with a gear clamp. I just don't trust that tension clamp. When we first touched it, the minute we took the pressure off of it, it started spewing coolant, so give that a little tighten down. And now we're ready to go pull a vacuum on the cooling system. And that's gonna let us know if the system is completely sealed or if it's compromised somewhere and there's a leak. And as long as everything's good, which I think it is, then we'll be able to fill the system. And the advantage of using a vacuum fill procedure versus just a funnel is that it literally sucks all the air out of the system under complete vacuum and leaves you with no air pockets whatsoever to be trapped in the heater core or anywhere else. So it's a pretty much perfect fill. So right now it's just pulling coolant in, and I'm just keeping this bottle full by pouring another bottle into it. All right, so we filled her up and you can see we're pretty much at the maximum. So now the next thing to do is basically just run it, make sure everything's good before we go and spend the time to put all of the pieces back on. All right, sorry to end the video so abruptly, but we have to end now. So basically, hopefully this video helped you, and hopefully it at least gives you some insight into what needs to come apart to get in there to do different jobs. We did replace a lot of different things in this case, so it's not really tailored towards one thing. But I mean, we did the heater hose lines, we did the thermostat and the bridge that goes underneath the motor mount. We did the oil cooler, which was a big one. Also tackled the intake with the bolts that were rotten, that are dreaded and nobody wants to do them. We changed our coolant reservoir and maybe one other thing, I can't remember. Oh, spark plugs, we did spark plugs. So yeah, I'm gonna put all this other stuff back together later and just basically do it in reverse of the way you took it apart. But as far as torque specs go, everything should just be pretty snug. They're just body panels. So yeah, I'm gonna clean this and double-sided tape it for the new window cowl piece that's going on here, or the old one I should say. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you got any questions, throw them in the comments. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions you might have. Give the video a thumbs up if it really did help, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.